Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm out on Lake Chickamauga. It is very warm for December. I'm wearing shorts and flip-flops right now, and before this little warm front we had, it was pretty cold. So the water temp is cold, and the fish are probably a little bit shallower, and so I think it's a perfect day to go throw a lipless crankbait. Lipless crankbait is definitely a go-to this time of year on any of the TVA lakes and a lot of lakes around the country. But one of the ways that I like to fish this bait this time of year is a yo-yo technique. So essentially, you know, lifting the bait up and down, letting it flutter all the way to the bottom. It's a great way to catch fish this time of year. So let's get out, see if we can catch some fish. I bet if we can get bit, they're going to be big. So let's see what we can catch. All right, guys, so this is a perfect example of a really good point to throw a lipless crankbait on and kind of, you know, yo-yo, almost fish it like a jig. Essentially, this point is kind of the last structure that's in between this big backwater and also the main creek channel here. So it's a really good spot for a lot of fish that live on both bodies to live, you know, and just hang out and feed on. And as you can see, the whole technique of yo-yoing a lipless crankbait is just fishing it real slow, kind of like a jig, just lifting the rod tip up a couple feet, let it fall back down to the bottom. And this lipless crankbait in particular has a nice shimmy to it as it falls, which not all lipless crankbaits do. Some of them tend to like kind of just fall on their side and then fall, you know, pretty quick, and they don't really have an action. Doesn't mean that it's not good for this technique. It just depends on what type of you know, mood the fish are in. But essentially, you're just lifting the rod tip, letting it fall down. And I do the same thing on the hard bottom like we have here on this point, or around vegetation, same exact thing. Only difference is when you're around vegetation, you're probably gonna have to rip it out of that grass to free the treble hooks. But I think we should be able to get a bite here. Whoa, holy cow, that's a big one. Oh my gosh, this is a giant. This may be a 10-pounder. Oh my gosh. It's not 10, but it's a giant. Oh my gosh. Barely hooked on the outside of the mouth too. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. Look at that fish. Oh my gosh, I'm trying not to cause a commotion right now, but look at the size of that fish. Oh my gosh, that was crazy. I didn't even feel the bite, but lifted up and he was there. It's like a 7-pounder. Oh my gosh, look at the size of that thing. That's why you want really sharp hooks. I changed out those those hooks to the Hayabusa trebles, and man, it paid off. That fish was barely hooked. I'm gonna get a picture real quick. All right, let's release her. That was too much fun, man. Go ahead, girl. Woo. Well, I didn't end up weighing that one, obviously, but it was like probably 6.5, 7 pounds for sure. If it was closer to 10, I definitely would have weighed it. That was too much fun. Looks like these guys are gonna Probably come in and ask what I caught him on. How's it going?
Good, how you? What's your name?
Miles.
Miles Burghoff.
Yeah, yes sir.
I knew that was you.
I thought it was a carp at first, to be honest with you. I mean, it just started bulldogging me. And well, take care, guys. All right, always nice meeting people. Also let this point kind of calm down a little bit. So that fish, I mean, that was really exciting. I honestly did not expect that to be a bass. At first I thought it was a carp that I'd snagged, and I was trying to, once I saw that it was a bass, I was trying to keep it real quiet because there's a lot of people around, and you know, you don't want to pull too much attention to yourself. But that one, I ended up sort of foul hooking it on the outside of the mouth. The back treble hook was inside the mouth, and the front one was just on the outside. And so what probably happened there is that fish probably was following it, you know, was really interested in it, but didn't commit to it, and he probably nosed down on it. And when I ripped it back up, I got her right in the nose. She may have nipped at it, but overall that kind of illustrates why you always want to have really fresh, sharp treble hooks on these baits. I actually bought this crankbait this morning, and immediately when I got to the boat, I put on a couple size 4 Hayabusa treble hooks on there. Really critical to have sharp hooks. So that's the first step, especially when you're yo-yoing it, because you catch a lot of fish. You'll have a lot of fish that just choke it, and it doesn't matter what kind of hooks you got on there. They'll, you know, it's so far down in their throat, they're not going to throw it. But oftentimes you're going to have those type of situations where, you know, they're just barely nipping at it or swiping at it or nose down, and you just because they're right there with their nose to the bait, you're able to hook them when you lift up. So really important, sharp treble hooks, man. I can't state that enough. You know, the majority of the year, in most circumstances that I throw a lipless crankbait in, I'm throwing it around grass, and the same thing happens this time of year too. But I don't pass up, you know, a good rocky area either. Ooh, that was a fish. I don't pass up a good rocky area with the lipless when I'm yo-yoing it. There he is. Whoa, barely hooked again. Man, they are just on fire today. Whoa, that's dangerous. But yeah, I mean, obviously throwing a lipless crankbait on hard bottoms when you're yo-yoing it is still pretty effective. And even so, more so, you know, during the winter time, you know, there's a lot of times that I just can't catch the fish in the grass, and these rocks, which retain a lot of heat, do really well, especially on sunny days where the rocks are kind of absorbing that heat. You know, with that fish, I actually felt him hit the first time, and he missed it, and just kind of, you know, sped up the retrieve a little bit, you know, lifted the rod tip a little bit faster and got him to react the second time. So, you know, sometimes you just got to really pay attention, and if you miss a fish, just switch it up a little bit and see if they'll react to it. So as far as boat positioning on these banks that I'm fishing, I'm generally, you know, paralleling the bank with the boat, but casting at a 45-degree angle towards the bank. So I'm probably, I'd say 30-35 feet from the bank and casting to it. You don't want to parallel with the bait unless you know exactly what depth range these fish are in. I like to work from shallow to deep is generally how I like to do it, but I like to keep that 45-degree angle, because if you went directly 90, I feel like you're going to miss a lot of the strike zone, and it's going to come to deeper water too fast. I really think that the first probably 20 foot from the bank is where these fish are generally at. All right, guys, so let's check out the setup that I use for yo-yoing this lipless crankbait. It's pretty simple, but it's a little bit different than I think what a lot of people use. So let's start off with the rod, because I think that's where a lot of people differ, and I like something a lot different than most people. I think that most people tend to gravitate towards the fiberglass or the composite rods, just because they keep the fish pegged a little bit better, because they got that nice parabolic bend. But I like to use a 7.3 medium heavy Versa series rod from Fitzgerald. It's a graphite rod, and I like a graphite rod especially for yo-yoing a lipless crankbait, because you want a rod that is highly sensitive and has a good backbone and a fast action. You know, sensitive so you can feel that bait work and know when it's got, you know, something on the treble hooks, and then also that fast action, so when you feel that bite and your rod might be, you know, pointed straight in the air, when you feel that bite, you can set the hook, and it's not just gonna, you know, bend all the way down on you. It's going to set that hook really fast. So I like a fast action a graphite rod for sure for this tactic. And sometimes, you know, if I'm going down to like a 1/4 ounce size a lipless crankbait, I might switch it up and go to a 7-foot medium heavy, like the Brian Thrift square bill rod. That's a really good one for lipless crankbaits. But generally the 7.3 for all the other 1/2 ounce and up models is going to be what I use. As far as the reel goes, as opposed to like casting and reeling tactics, I like to use a higher speed gear ratio reel. This one right here is a 7.2 to 1 gear ratio VLD10. I'd actually even suggest going higher than that to like an 8.1 to 1 gear ratio. And the reason for that is, again, this is a yo-yo tactic. It's more like fishing a worm or a jig, and you want the reel to be able to reel in the slack. You're really not working the bait with the reel with this. You're just relying on it to reel in the slack. So you know, again, if you're yo-yoing it and then all of a sudden you get a bite and your rod tips straight in the air, you want a reel that can bring in that slack real quick so you can set the hook. So a high-speed gear ratio reel, really important here. As far as the line goes, I like to use heavier line, 17, 20-pound test. A Brazex is my favorite, just because we're fishing it around you know, heavy cover and also around sharp rocks and things like that. And I like the 17 to 20-pound test because it allows this bait to slow down on the fall a little bit. You know, the thinner the line, the lighter, the smaller the diameter line, the faster this bait's going to fall. But I want it to kind of parachute down a little bit, so I use a heavier line. And you know, these fish just aren't line shy with this technique, so you don't need to go any lighter than 17 or 20-pound test. Finally, let's talk about the bait. I'm going to be using today. I'm using a 1/2 ounce sexy shad. This is just the regular rattling version. It's got a bunch of BBs in there, and I really like this one. This is the blue gizzard shad. This is a really good color out here, and slightly stained water. This is really good color. The biggest thing is, of course, switching out your treble hooks. These have the Hayabusa treble hooks on there. Sharp hooks are super critical. I've already talked about it in this video, but man, if you're not switching out your treble hooks and you're fishing with stock trebles, you're going to have a lot of bites, and you're probably going to miss some of those fish. So switch out your treble hooks. Another thing that I will mention as far as color goes is, today they're eating the shad color, but some days, especially once you start getting into January, February, March, you need to switch over to you know, reds and crayfish colors. But make sure you've got both shad patterns and crayfish patterns on hand to experiment with. So that right there is the complete arsenal for my lipless crankbaits when I'm yo-yoing them. It's a fun technique. It's a very productive technique this time of year. So just go out there, cover some water, fish different types of structure, different areas, and I promise you, this time of year, you want to be yo-yoing a lipless crankbait. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and I'm going to see you out on the water. See ya.